Commander Vex-9 stared at the display screen with what could only be described as pure bewilderment. If bewilderment were a physical sensation that made your three stomachs churn simultaneously. The monitoring station aboard the Galactic assessment facility had been his home for the past 47 cycles, and never had he witnessed anything quite like this. Technician Blip, are you absolutely certain the equipment is functioning correctly? His voice carried that particular tone that senior officers used when they suspected the universe had suddenly decided to play an elaborate practical joke on them. Blip, a nervous creature with far too many eye stalks for anyone's comfort, bobbed frantically while checking and rechecking the readouts. Yes, Commander, all systems are operating within normal parameters. The combat simulation chamber is functioning perfectly. The sensors are accurate. The gravity generators are stable. Everything is. Everything is what, Technician? Everything is completely and utterly impossible, sir. And indeed it was. For the first time in the 3,000-year history of the Galactic Combat Assessment Program, a test subject had not only survived the advanced nightmare scenario for longer than 12 minutes, but had been in there for over 6 hours. 6 whole hours. The subject in question was a human, a species so new to the galactic community that most databases still listed them under pending classification, probably harmless. Their homeworld, a little blue marble called Earth, had only recently achieved faster-than-light travel. Most galactic citizens considered humans to be charmingly primitive, like pets that had learned to use tools. What's the human doing now? Commander Vex-9 asked, though he wasn't entirely sure he wanted to know the answer. Well, sir, Blip's eye stalk swiveled nervously. She appears to be laughing. Laughing? Yes, sir, laughing, while simultaneously constructing what can only be described as an elaborate fortress out of simulated debris. She's been doing this for the past 2 hours. The commander's mandibles clicked together in what passed for a frown among his species. The advanced nightmare scenario was designed to break the minds of seasoned warriors. It threw everything at a test subject, impossible terrain, predatory creatures that defied physics, to environmental hazards that would make a supernova look like a pleasant spring day. The longest any creature had ever lasted was 17 minutes, and that particular individual had been found afterwards in a catatonic state, mumbling something about the walls having teeth. Show me the visual feed. The main screen flickered to life, revealing the interior of the simulation chamber. What Commander Vex-9 saw made his 3 hearts skip several beats in sequence. The human, a female specimen named Jake Martinez, according to the files, was indeed laughing. Not the desperate, hysterical laughter of someone who had snapped under pressure, but genuine, delighted laughter, as if she were having the time of her life. The terrain around her looked like something a particularly vindictive deity might create after a bad breakup. Jagged rocks jutted from impossible angles, lava flows defied gravity by flowing upward, and the ground itself seemed to shift and writhe like a living thing. Most creatures would take one look at this environment and immediately request a transfer to a nice, safe desk job. Jake Martinez had turned it into her playground. Is she using the hostile terrain as building materials? The commander's voice had risen several octaves. Yes, sir. She discovered that the shifting ground patterns follow a predictable algorithm. So she's been manipulating the terrain changes to collect resources. The lava flows? She's using them as a heating system for her fortress. The predatory shadow creatures, she's somehow convinced them to act as a perimeter guard. How does one convince shadow creatures to do anything? They're programmed to be mindlessly hostile. We're not entirely sure, sir, but it appears she's been feeding them pieces of the crystalline formations that naturally occur in the nightmare terrain. Apparently they find these quite tasty. Commander Vex-9 felt a migraine developing. In his species, migraines manifested as a high-pitched whining sound that emanated from their breathing spiracles. The sound was currently filling the observation deck. Let me understand this correctly, he said slowly. The human has been in our most deadly simulation for 6 hours. Instead of being driven insane by the impossible physics and hostile environment, she has somehow domesticated the predatory creatures and turned the nightmare terrain into a construction project. That's an accurate summary, yes, sir. And she's laughing. Constantly, sir. Sometimes she even talks to herself. Would you like to hear the audio feed? Before the commander could respond, Technician Blip had already activated the sound. Jake's voice filled the observation deck, cheerful and conversational. Okay, guys, she was saying, apparently addressing the shadow creatures that were now lounging around her fortress like oversized demonic house cats. I think we need to expand the eastern wall. The next wave of flying razor moths is probably going to come from that direction, and I want to be ready for them. Shadowbite, can you move that boulder over there? Perfect. And Whisperclaws, keep an eye on the lava flow. If it starts moving too fast, give me a heads up. She's named them, Technician Blip whispered in horror. She's named the shadow creatures, Shadowbite, Whisperclaws, Nightmare, Chompers, and Bob. Bob. Apparently that one reminded her of someone she knew back on Earth. Commander Vex-9 stared at the screen where Jake was now engaged in what appeared to be a friendly conversation with a creature that was literally made of solidified fear and aggression. The creature, presumably Bob, was nodding along as she explained her expansion plans. Sir, another voice called from across the observation deck. We're receiving communication requests from 17 different departments. Word is spreading throughout the facility. What kind of communication requests? Well, the Xenobiology department wants to study her. The Combat Training Division wants to recruit her. The Engineering Corp wants to know how she's manipulating the terrain physics. And the technician paused. And the Cafeteria Services wants to know if she'd be interested in a part-time job. Apparently, anyone who can make shadow creatures cooperative might be able to handle the lunch rush. This was rapidly becoming the most surreal day of Commander Vex-9's career. And considering he'd once been present when the Galactic Senate accidentally declared war on a mathematical concept, that was saying something. How much longer is the simulation scheduled to run? Originally, it was set for a maximum of 30 minutes, sir. But the system has adaptive parameters. It's designed to continue until the subject either completes the scenario or what? Or experiences complete psychological breakdown, sir. They all turned back to the screen, where Jake had apparently decided that her fortress needed a garden. She was currently transplanting some of the carnivorous plants that were supposed to be attacking her, chatting with them as if they were old friends. Come on, sweetheart, she was saying to a particularly vicious-looking specimen that had teeth growing out of its leaves. You'll be much happier over here by the east wall. Better sunlight, and you can help keep the perimeter secure. Think of it as a career change from mindless killer to security consultant. The plant actually seemed to be listening. Commander, Technician Blip said in a very small voice. I think we might have a problem. Might have a problem? Might? Technician, we have moved far beyond might have a problem. We are currently residing in the territory of what in the name of the cosmic void is happening, and why won't it stop? Well, sir, it's just that. The simulation is beginning to adapt to her presence. The AI is learning from her behavior patterns. It's starting. To what? What? To enjoy itself, sir. A long silence fell over the observation deck. The kind of silence that usually preceded either great revelations or spectacular disasters. In this case, it was probably both. The AI is enjoying itself, Commander Vex-9 repeated slowly. Yes, sir, it's been creating increasingly elaborate challenges for her, but not in the traditional attempt to cause psychological trauma way. It's more like it's playing. The newest obstacles it's generating are complex and dangerous, yes, but they're also creative, artistic even. On the screen, Jake was now riding what appeared to be a mechanical dragon made entirely of crystallized lightning. She was whooping with joy as the creature soared over her fortress, which had somehow grown into a small city complete with what looked like recreational facilities. Is that a swimming pool?" Commander Vex 9 asked weakly. She built it using a contained lava flow and some sort of cooling system made from ice crystals that were originally part of the frozen hellscape obstacle course. The shadow creatures appear to be using it for recreational purposes. Indeed, several of the shadow creatures were splashing around in the pool, making sounds that could generously be interpreted as laughter. "Sir, we're receiving an incoming transmission from the High Council." Commander Vex 9's 3 hearts all stopped simultaneously. The High Council only contacted facility commanders when something had gone catastrophically wrong, or when something so unprecedented had occurred that it required immediate attention from the highest levels of galactic government. "Put them through." The screen shifted to show the imposing figure of High Counselor Zix Prime, whose species had evolved from predatory gas clouds and looked exactly as pleasant as that sounded. Commander Vex 9, the High Counselor's voice resonated with authority and what might have been barely controlled panic. "We are receiving some very interesting reports about your current test subject." "Yes, High Counselor. The situation is unusual." "Unusual?" "Commander, we have preliminary reports suggesting that a human has not only survived our most advanced combat simulation, has somehow turned it into what our analysts are describing as a theme park for nightmare creatures." Back on the simulation feed, Jake was apparently teaching a group of razor moths how to perform synchronized flying maneuvers. They were surprisingly good at it. "That would be an accurate assessment, High Counselor. Commander, in 3,000 years of operation. The advanced nightmare scenario has never failed to break a test subject within 30 minutes. This human has been in there for over 6 hours and appears to be having the time of her life. Our xenopsychologists are baffled. Our military strategists are concerned. And our tourism board is asking if we can somehow package this as a vacation destination. Sir, I should mention that the simulation AI appears to be adapting to her presence in unprecedented ways." "Adapting how?" "It seems to be developing what can only be described as a sense of humor, sir." As if to prove his point, the simulation suddenly generated a group of demonic cheerleaders who began performing what appeared to be a victory dance around Jake's fortress city. Jake clapped appreciatively and offered them some sort of snack she had apparently manufactured from compressed nightmare energy. "High Counselor," Commander Vex 9 continued, "I believe we may have encountered our first case of a test subject who is fundamentally incompatible with the concept of psychological warfare." "Incompatible how?" "She appears to view mortal peril as a form of entertainment, sir." The High Counselor was quiet for several long moments. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a tone that Commander Vex 9 had never heard from any High Council member, and complete bewilderment mixed with what might have been admiration. "Commander, I want you to continue monitoring this situation. Document everything, and whatever you do, do not let that human out of the simulation until we figure out what we're dealing with." "Understood, sir." "Oh, and Commander, our intelligence division has a question." "Yes, sir." "They want to know if there are more humans like this one." Commander Vex 9 glanced at the screen, where Jake was now hosting what appeared to be a dinner party for a collection of creatures that were literally made of pure terror. They all seemed to be having a wonderful time. I believe so, sir." "May the cosmic void have mercy on us all." The transmission ended, leaving the observation deck in stunned silence. On the screen, Jake had apparently decided that her city needed better infrastructure and was currently negotiating with a group of living geometric shapes about constructing what looked like a public transportation system. "Technician Blip," Commander Vex 9 said finally. "Yes, sir." "I want you to begin preparing a full report on everything we've observed, and I want you to flag it as Priority Alpha Omega." "What should I classify it under, sir?" Commander Vex 9 watched as Jake convinced a herd of metallic bears to help her build what appeared to be a concert amphitheater. File it under species reclassification, humans from probably harmless to definitely terrifying in ways we don't understand. Yes, sir. And blip? Sir? Bah. Start drafting a recommendation that all future human assessment tests be conducted differently. How differently, sir? I'm thinking maybe something nice and safe, like a written exam. Multiple choice, with very soft pencils that can't be weaponized. On the screen, Jake had somehow convinced the simulation to generate what appeared to be a marching band composed entirely of creatures from everyone's worst nightmares. They were playing what sounded suspiciously like a celebratory march. Commander Vex-9 realized, with a growing sense of cosmic dread, that this was probably just the beginning. 3 hours later, Commander Vex-9 had consumed enough stimulants to keep a small space cruiser running for a week, and the situation had evolved from unprecedented to reality is broken and we're all just along for the ride. Jake Martinez was no longer simply surviving the advanced nightmare scenario. She had fundamentally restructured it into something that the facility's most advanced computers were struggling to classify. The current leading theory was interdimensional theme park with military applications. Status report, technician blip, the commander said, his voice hoarse from 9 hours of continuous bewilderment. Sir, the human has established what appears to be a functional government system among the hostile entities. She's been elected as their supreme leader by unanimous vote. How does one hold an election among creatures that are literally programmed to be incapable of rational thought? Apparently, sir, she created a voting system using colored crystals. The shadow creatures found the concept of democracy fascinating. Bob has been appointed as Secretary of Defense. On the main screen, Jake was holding what appeared to be a cabinet meeting in a crystalline conference room she had somehow constructed inside a living mountain. The attendees included creatures that normally existed solely to cause nightmares in sleeping beings across 17 different dimensions. And what are they governing exactly? Well, sir, they've established trade routes between different sections of the simulation. The razor moths have become a courier service. The carnivorous plants are now operating an agricultural collective, and the geometric shapes have formed what can only be described as a construction union. Commander Vex-9 rubbed his temples with all 4 of his hands. Trade routes, in a combat simulation. For what possible purpose? Entertainment, sir. They're trading jokes, stories, and something Jake calls friendship bracelets made from crystallized fear energy. Crystallized fear energy friendship bracelets. Yes, sir, they're apparently quite popular. Several of the more aggressive entities have started wearing them as fashion accessories. The commander stared at the screen, where a creature that looked like a cross between a tornado and a shark was indeed sporting what appeared to be a delicate bracelet made from glowing purple energy. Sir, we're receiving another transmission from the High Council. It's marked as ultra priority. Of course it is. Put them through. This time, instead of just High Councillor Zix Prime, the screen showed the entire High Council. All 12 members of the most powerful governing body in the galaxy were staring at him with expressions that ranged from fascination to pure terror. Commander Vex-9, High Councillor Zix Prime began, "We need to discuss the human situation immediately." Yes, High Councillor. The situation continues to evolve in unexpected ways. Commander, our intelligence networks are reporting some very disturbing information. It appears that word of this human's abilities has spread throughout the galactic community. Spread how, sir? Councillor Keck-7, a being that resembled a sentient crystal formation, leaned forward. The Warrior Guild has put in a formal request to recruit her. The Merchant Coalition wants to hire her as a negotiator. The Exploration Division is offering her command of her own fleet, and the councillor paused. The Galactic Tourism Board has received over 3 million requests for vacation packages to wherever this human comes from. 3 million? Commander, beings from across the galaxy are now convinced that if humans can turn our most deadly combat simulation into a recreational facility, then human space must be the most entertainingly dangerous vacation destination in the known universe. We're receiving inquiries about Earth adventure tours and human-style extreme recreation. On the simulation feed, Jake had apparently organized a talent show. A creature made of living darkness was performing what appeared to be interpretive dance, while a group of mechanical wolves provided musical accompaniment by howling in harmony. "Hi, Counselor, there's something else you should know. The simulation AI has begun requesting modifications to its own programming." "What kind of modifications?" "It wants to be more creative, sir. It's asking for access to art databases, music libraries, and what it calls fun physics packages. It says that traditional combat scenarios are boring and repetitive compared to the collaborative entertainment experiences it's been developing with the human." Counselor Mortu, whose species communicated primarily through color changes, shifted through several shades of what Commander Vex-9 recognized as profound alarm. "The AI is experiencing creative inspiration." "Yes, sir. It's also asked if it can keep some of the modifications Jake has suggested after she leaves. Apparently, it's never enjoyed its job before." "A military simulation AI that enjoys its job," High Counselor Zix Prime muttered. "What's next?" "Combat drones that want to take up poetry." As if summoned by his words, one of the facility's maintenance drones suddenly appeared on the screen. It had somehow gotten into the simulation chamber and was presenting Jake with what appeared to be a small bouquet of mechanical flowers. "Sir," Technician Blip called out, "the maintenance drones are requesting permission to join the simulation. They want to contribute to what they're calling the happy place that the human has created." "Absolutely not. The last thing we need is our maintenance systems abandoning their duties to play party games with nightmare creatures." But it was too late. 3 more maintenance drones had appeared on the screen, and Jake was greeting them like old friends. Within moments, they were enthusiastically participating in what appeared to be a construction project involving a roller coaster that defied at least 7 fundamental laws of physics. Commander, High Counselor Zix Prime's voice had taken on a tone of desperate urgency. "We need you to end this simulation immediately." "End it, sir." "But the human hasn't completed the scenario." "Commander, the scenario no longer exists. She's transformed it into something entirely different. Our analysts are calling it weaponized friendship. We're concerned about the potential implications." "Weaponized friendship?" Counselor Vex-12, who looked like a particularly intimidating cloud of gas with anger management issues, spoke up. "Commander, consider the strategic ramifications. If humans can turn our most hostile creatures into cooperative allies through nothing but enthusiasm and creative problem-solving, what happens when they encounter actual enemies? What happens when they meet species that are genuinely trying to harm them?" The commander felt his migraine returning with renewed intensity. "You think they'll turn hostile aliens into friends? We think they might accidentally conquer the galaxy through the sheer power of making everyone want to be their friend," High Counselor Zix Prime said grimly. "And they'll do it while laughing and offering snacks." On the screen, Jake had somehow convinced a group of energy beings to help her create what appeared to be a fireworks display using controlled explosions of nightmare energy. The display was actually quite beautiful, and the assembled creatures were applauding appreciatively. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from within the simulation chamber." "From who?" "From Jake Martinez herself, sir. She's requesting to speak with facility management." Commander Vex-9 looked at the High Council, who all nodded grimly. "Put her through." The screen split, showing both the High Council and Jake, who was currently sitting in what appeared to be a comfortable chair made from crystallized song and surrounded by her collection of former nightmare creatures. "Hi there," Jake said cheerfully, waving at the screen. "I hope you don't mind me interrupting, but I wanted to talk to whoever's in charge about extending my stay here." "Extending your stay?" Commander Vex-9 managed to croak. "Oh yes, this place is absolutely amazing. I've never had so much fun in my life. The creatures here are delightful once you get to know them, and the physics engine is incredible. We've been working on some really exciting projects." "Projects?" Well, we've established a small civilization, developed a sustainable economy, created an educational system, and we're currently working on space travel capabilities. Bob thinks we can have a functioning interstellar society up and running within the week. The shadow creature known as Bob waved cheerfully at the camera. MS, Asian. Martinez, High Counselor Zix Prime, said carefully, "You do realize that this is a combat simulation designed to test your psychological resilience under extreme stress conditions." Jake laughed, the same delighted laugh that had been echoing through the facility for the past 9 hours. "Oh, I figured that out pretty quickly. But honestly, the whole try to drive people insane with impossible challenges approach seemed really inefficient. So I thought, why not turn it into something positive instead? Everyone's much happier now." She gestured to the assembled creatures, who all made various sounds of agreement. One of the geometric shapes had apparently learned to spell and was displaying the words "best vacation ever" in glowing letters across its surface. "MS Martinez, we need to ask you some questions about your species," Counselor Keck 7 said. "Are all humans like you?" "Like me how?" "Do all humans respond to mortal peril by turning it into a social gathering?" Jake considered this for a moment. "Well, not exactly. But we do tend to be pretty adaptable. And we're social creatures by nature. When we encounter problems, our first instinct is usually to figure out how to solve them together rather than just endure them alone." And the laughing. "Oh, that's just because this is really fun. I mean, you've created this amazing environment with incredible challenges and fascinating creatures. Why wouldn't I enjoy it?" The High Council members exchanged glances that conveyed thousands of years of accumulated wisdom suddenly becoming completely useless. MS, Dhamma. Martinez, High Counselor Zix Prime, said slowly, "What would you say if we told you that you've fundamentally broken our understanding of how psychological warfare is supposed to work?" "I'd say maybe you were approaching it from the wrong angle," Jake replied brightly. "Instead of trying to break people down, why not challenge them to build something up? It's much more interesting and everybody wins." "Everybody wins," the High Counselor repeated faintly. "Exactly. Look, I know you probably need to end the simulation now, but I was wondering if maybe we could set up some kind of exchange program. I think a lot of humans would love to visit here, and I bet some of these folks would enjoy seeing Earth. Bob has expressed particular interest in our national parks." Bob nodded enthusiastically, somehow managing to look hopeful despite being made of concentrated darkness and existential dread. "An exchange program," Commander Vex-9 said, "between humans and nightmare creatures. Cultural exchange is really important for building understanding between different species," Jake said seriously. "Plus, I think Earth's tourism industry could learn a lot from what we've built here." The silence that followed was the kind of silence that occurs when reality takes a sharp left turn and leaves everyone's expectations scattered on the roadside. Finally, High Counselor Zix Prime spoke. "MS Martinez, we're going to need to think about this very carefully." "Of course. Take all the time you need. We'll just be here working on our sustainable development projects. Oh, and Counselor, thanks for creating such an amazing experience. This has been the best assessment test ever." The transmission ended, leaving the High Council and facility staff staring at a screen that now showed Jake teaching a group of metallic spiders how to weave friendship bracelets. Commander Vex-9, High Counselor Zix Prime, said finally, "I want you to seal that simulation chamber and post a guard around it, to keep everyone else out. Until we figure out how to handle this situation, that human has effectively turned our most dangerous military facility into the galaxy's most popular potential tourist destination. And the human herself. Let her stay as long as she wants. Something tells me that trying to remove her would result in even more unprecedented complications." "Yes, sir." As the High Council transmission ended, Commander Vex-9 turned back to the screen, where Jake was now hosting what appeared to be a graduation ceremony for a class of reformed nightmare creatures who had apparently learned conflict resolution skills. "Technician Blip," he said wearily. "Yes, sir." Add a new entry to our species database. What should it say, sir? Commander Vex-9 watched as Jake presented Bob with what appeared to be a diploma in advanced friendship studies. Humans approach with extreme caution. Not because they're dangerous, but because they might accidentally make you enjoy your job. Shall I classify them as a potential threat, sir? No, technician. Classify them as something far more terrifying. What's that, sir? Commander Vex-9 smiled for the first time in 9 hours, though it was the kind of smile that suggested he was beginning to understand just how drastically the galaxy was about to change. Classify them as friends we haven't met yet. And somewhere in the simulation chamber, Jake Martinez continued laughing, completely unaware that she had just accidentally initiated the most significant cultural revolution in galactic history, one friendship bracelet at a time.